Welcome back, it's your man CJ Williams here to rank Chi-Town's Nas. Rapper, actor, activist Lonnie Lynn checks all the boxes. For those who are keeping track, his trophy case currently consists of 3 Grammys, an Academy Award, Primetime Emmy, hell, he even has a Golden Globe. By the end of this ranking, we should have answered 2 things. How many classics does he have, and where does he rank in all-time ears for production? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You already knew that though. Let's get to the list. Number 13. Universal Mind Control. Building a fan base through consistency and resurrection, no pun intended, Comm would release over a dozen albums and counting. While we stand behind most of his distinctive catalog and its varying degrees of redeemability, we can't say the same for his 8th studio album, Universal Mind Control. Initially titled Invincible Summer, the album would see a 3-month break to facilitate his schedule for the movie Wanted. UMC branded the Neptunes' illustrious executive production tag, but none of the late 2000s magic. Following his streak of producer/collab combos, including Dilla, Questlove, and Kanye, not to mention Pharrell's successes with Hove, Snoop, and the Clips, the stakes were high. The album, however, would remind Lonnie that he couldn't be in 2 places at once. The Chi-Town's MC's chemistry didn't connect with the up-tempo and eccentric production style of VA's finest. We tuned in hoping to find another come close, but after crawling through songs like Sex for Sugar, Announcement, and What a World, we would have confessed to anything.
I just want it to stop.
Make My Day was a winning scratch-off, but that's Mr. DJ behind the boards. Shout out Earth Tone. In the hands of a different artist, songs like Gladiator, Inhale, and Punch Drunk Love could have potentially made waves. But this pairing is more akin to judging Ghostbusters CGI through Avengers glasses. Common's winning formula has always been storytelling over soul samples and instrumentation. Can you guess what UMC completely shifted away from? Number 12, Can I Borrow $1? Released under the name Common Sense, Lynn's debut would fly so low under the radar, some of the audience watching this haven't even heard about it. Let's just say it exhaled a sigh of relief when UMC added itself to the ranks. Comm, Twilight Tone, and No ID, who at the time went by Immense Slope, had yet to transfer their souls into sound, instead opting for a more mainstream delivery and contemporary flow. Stemming from a 1991 feature in the Source's Unsigned Hype section, Comm would ink a deal with Relativity Records. With 3 singles that all performed well on the rap charts, buzz for the 19-year-old's release was underway. Released to mixed reviews, audiences heard potential, especially with the production, but little to no execution from the MC. If we gave 2014 Common a beat like A Penny for My Thoughts, or 07 Common a joint like Take It Easy, he would have been floating. I guess practice does make perfect. Despite its placement in our rankings, the production on here would normally land this kind of project a few spots higher. More on that later. Yes, songs like Pitch and Pennies, Charms Alarm, and Breaker 19 showcase Common's ability to string metaphors together, rap 120 words a minute, and flow like the MCs of the time. But they lack the soul and introspection that would become calling cards of him throughout his discography. The album is just a day in the life of a young Common who ironically didn't have any sense at all. The album didn't catapult him into national notoriety, but it did help him build a loyal underground fan base. This following, along with his growth as an artist, would lay the groundwork for resurrection. Seeing as this was a debut that would precede a 30-year career, second to last isn't sounding too bad. Number 11, Let Love. Accompanying his 2019 memoir, Let Love Have the Last Word, Common delivers his most personal and revealing project in Let Love. From Show Me What You Love and Memories of Home to Fifth Story and Her Love, the Windy City's MC's mission to promote healing from within is unmistakable. Common reunites with Dilla Spirit on Her Love, enlisting Daniel Caesar for this new age interpretation of the 94 classic I Used to Love Her. Common gives listeners his take on the current state of hip-hop. We always love hearing unreleased Dilla, but honestly, having this serve as a follow-up to one of Comm's most important songs did nothing but prevent this one from standing on its own 2 feet. The MC sounds sluggish and uninspired, rattling off names but missing the point of the original song altogether. Show Me What You Love finds the Chicago MC dismantling his ego while reconciling a dysfunctional relationship with his daughter. But those Jill Scott vocals? Spiritual. We're not mad at Swiss and Comm linking for Hercules. Swiss taps into Comm's more abrasive side, sounding like an outtake from the Nobody Smiling sessions. Lakili 47 had to be the biggest surprise on the album for us though. It's rare for us to hear someone do a chorus and we linger on it to the point of fixation, but we can't just figure out why she didn't get to spit a full 16. Other than the unearthed Dilla production on Her Love, Kareem Riggins holds it down solo on the 1s and 2s. While this minimal producer formula usually works for Common sound, just like the material and rapping on the project, the production doesn't have enough depth and variety for us to leave feeling satisfied. Number 10, A Beautiful Revolution, Parts 1 and 2. So this one was a bit weird to rank. Ask Wikipedia about the projects and you'll find they're either classified as EPs or Common's 13th and 14th albums respectively. Go on Apple Music and you'll find them packaged as a combination album despite dropping nearly a year apart. For argument's sake, we grouped them together, but if it makes any difference, we think the second part was better than the first. But we think we've coined a new term for the hip-hop lexicon. Watercolors rap, a safe yet consistent sound that doesn't challenge an artist to grow. In the same vein of A Richer Than I Ever Been from Ross or The Recession 2 by Jeezy, A Beautiful Revolution doesn't really force Common out of his comfort zone. Rather, it permits him to essentially repackage older material for a newer audience. We're not mad at it. If you're feeding a loyal fan base, then do your thing. But that calculated and risk-free approach usually doesn't yield results. With guest appearances from Stevie Wonder, Black Thought, and Lenny Kravitz, we expected the project to be more memorable. Truth be told, it sounded like Common popped up at an open mic and started reading from his notebook. Spurred from the BLM marches that took place after the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, Common had one of the most fitting opportunities in his career to merge his music and message. Somehow it felt like we walked away with less resolve than we came into it with. In his defense, Common's been speaking on this stuff for over 30 years. Nobody had to twist our arms to revisit When We Move, Say Peace, Don't Forget Who You Are, and Saving Grace, but we'd be lying if we said it was because of Common. The features and production definitely made us rewind. We don't know where PJ came from, but we should be hearing them on much bigger projects. Crit, Cole, Kendrick, y'all should be in the studio right now. Ultimately, while we appreciate Comm's focus and deliberate messaging, this is another instance of quantity diluting quality. Number 9, Electric Circus. Following the runaway success of Like Water for Chocolate, Common and the Soulquarians seemingly had the underground on lock. While they did roll out a slew of classics during this period, including Voodoo, Mama's Gun, and Black on Both Sides, once Electric Circus hit shelves, we could collectively hear the group scraping the bottom of the barrel for the sound that permeated airways just a few years prior. Initially receiving positive reviews from critics, the album wouldn't get a lot of love from fans. In hindsight, we can comfortably say that the album was overhated. Not only would it inspire the sounds of artists like Anderson .Paak, Bruno Mars, and Janelle Monáe, but it would give us some songs like Come Close, Between Me, You, and Liberation, and Heaven Somewhere. Electric Circus is easily one of Common's most creative and visionary projects to date. We know what you're thinking. If Common's most freeform and formulaic albums are sitting right next to each other in a ranking, what benefits do you get from taking risks? For starters, the experimentation on this album was one of the stronger qualities we appreciated. It was the execution that left a lot to be desired. Com's lyrical performances don't match the energy he gets from Mary J. Blige, Jill Scott, and CeeLo. Also, while the soundscape of the album is damn near euphoric, there's no structure to any of it. No storytelling gems to praise, no back and forth lyrical exchanges. The creativity is the factor that keeps this album from scratching the bottom of his catalog. His merging of hip-hop, pop, R&B, and rock elements play like a homage to the musical icons that grace the album's artwork, all made possible by brilliant executive production from Questlove. If we had one takeaway from the album, it would be Com's ability to blend into that Soulquarian R&B space. The chemistry he had with artists like Erica and D'Angelo is what gave his earlier 2000s work such a timeless feeling. Number 8, Nobody Smiling. Our pick for Common's most underrated LP, the Chi-Town MC's 10th album sees him and No ID running it back for their grittiest work to date. One look at the features and fans instantly knew this wasn't going to be peace and positivity calm. With appearances from G Herbo, Lil Herb at the time, Snow Allegra, Dreezy, and Vince Staples, Lynn enlists the next generation in the hopes that they can voice their own frustrations. We get crazy features from Sean Don on Diamonds and Dreezy on Hustle Harder. But that Vince verse on Kingdom? His verse was only a minute and some change, but we're not exaggerating when we say it felt like he bodied Calm for 5 minutes. Just when we thought it couldn't get any crazier, we stumbled upon the Jay Electronica remix? Safe to say this isn't Common's song anymore. This wasn't just a project carried by features though. Calm would still shine on joints like Real with Elijah Blake and The Neighborhood with Herb and James Fauntleroy. The outro to Nobody Smiling, Rewind That, sees Common taking an emotional stroll down memory lane. Not just on the album, but across his catalog. Rewind That is one of his most precisely crafted stories because it's one of his most bittersweet memories. He starts off reminiscing about the beginning he shared with Twilight Tone and No ID, their meteoric rise, and the guilt he felt from not working with them on Like Water for Chocolate. He ends the song describing what it was like to see Dilla getting progressively sicker with lupus and how he took that time for granted. It didn't make us cry or nothing. Okay, maybe a little bit. Nobody's Smiling put his chemistry with the next generation on full display. While his collabs with Vince and Sean do feel effortless, we do have to dock him points for having features on 7 of the album's 10 standard cuts. While No ID would executive produce Comm's 2016 joint Black America Again, we haven't heard Common over a No ID beat since Nobody's Smiling. How is it that everyone's been in the studio with Dion but Common? Given what we've heard since the 2016 release, will we even want to hear another Common and No ID collab? The answer is yes, but let us know down in the comments what your thoughts are on the two's extensive history and if you want to hear what they would cook up in 2023. Number 7, The Dreamer, The Believer. Appearing on his first Common project in nearly 15 years, No ID produces the entirety of Comm's 9th studio release. Bouncing back from Universal Mind Control, Lynn assured listeners that he wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Hence the stability and quality that a producer like Dion would prove. Also worth noting, this would be Common's first album after leaving the Good Music label. Pretty steep expectations. The project would see a lot of firsts. We finally get that Nas and Common collab. Lynn enlists Maya Angelou's services for the first and only time of his career. And we even get some shots fired at an up-and-coming Drake. Now let's talk about that Nas collab. Going all the way back to '94, Common and Nas had been linked to each other for their comparable flows, storytelling, and lyrical approaches to rap. So much so that Common would address the comparisons on 2007's Finding Forever. Fast forward to 2011 and we get a pairing that on paper sounds too good to be true. In reality, while the collab didn't quite meet expectations, it did more than enough to build hype for both of their upcoming albums. Nas will get the better of Common, but that's to be expected from one of hip-hop's greatest. No ID's Nas sample essentially made it his beat anyway. Sweet would see Common taking shots at the industry's newest trend of melodic rap. Think Hove on Death of Autotune. And just like Hove, Comm's attempt to end the trend ultimately gave it more life, but not before blogs would run with it as a Drake diss. Common would claim that the diss was a blank check for anybody who wanted to cash it, and Drake would do just that on stage scheming from Rick Ross's Rich Forever mixtape. The Dreamer, The Believer earned positive reviews and seemed to comfortably reset listeners' palates after UMC. For fans who aren't familiar with his 2011 LP but still wanted to add some more classics to the Common playlist, we recommend Lovin' I Lost, Gold, Celebrate, and Raw. Number 6, One Day It All Makes Sense. Following the critical emergence of Resurrection, Common was riding a wave of momentum that would have had lesser rappers crashing out. Instead, we get one of his most consistently solid efforts with heaters like Retrospect for Life, Stolen Moments Part 2, and Invocation littered throughout the album. The 90s neo-soul scene saw some of music's most creative and prolific artists gathered in the same space. Common would inadvertently be at the forefront of that movement. Features from Lauryn Hill, Erykah Badu, Black Thought, and Q-Tip, along with inspiration from the Native Tongues Collective, would serve as a blueprint for the Soulquarians, who would start releasing music less than 18 months later. The album is where we believe Common truly started to understand the importance of collaboration. Have you heard the proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together? Well, this album was definitely a catalyst in Lynn's mapped out longevity. On the one hand, we get competitive MC Common. The rapper trades bars with revered lyricist Black Thought and Cannabis, in addition to appearances from De La Soul and Q-Tip. But we also get big picture Common. Here he takes a backseat by letting more established artists like Erykah Badu and Lauryn Hill do what they do best, take your song from you. Fun fact, this is only one of 2 albums we found that sees both of the neo-soul superstars on the same track list. Tiana Taylor's The Album. If you know the other one, feel free to drop it in the comments. One Day would boast a career-high 17-song track list, despite both Water for Chocolate and Electric Circus sporting longer run times. In a catalog as stacked and congested as Common's, even a 6th place finish is an indicator of a quality album. While the lyrical content is on brand and we end up with one of Common's best supporting cast, we can't ignore the lackluster production of the project. We're not saying he was rapping over Nas curated beats, shout out to Godson, but he should have had an answer for I Used to Love Her. Anybody who watches this channel knows that we hold No ID in the highest echelon of hip-hop producers. But as far as standout production goes, he and the rest of the team behind the boards didn't leave Com much to work with. Couple that with an average song duration of 4 minutes, and it's no wonder this album is rarely brought up in the discussion of his best works. Yep, we had to do another one. Moving forward, if we have an artist classic count at 4 or more, you can expect to see this classic zone appearing throughout the rankings. With that being said, if you called any of these 5 projects classic, you wouldn't hear an argument from us. Number 5, Resurrection. Ascending to a level of lore few albums are ever impactful enough to see, Resurrection essentially put the Midwest on the map. His last album before dropping Sense from his stage name, Common saw the writing on the wall after the reception of Can I Borrow a Dollar? And rightfully so, he didn't like it. Rather than the lickety-split rap flows that his peers were using, Lynn would slow down the tempo while adopting the spoken word delivery he would reach mainstream audiences through. We get slappers like Book of Life, Nothing to Do, and Some Shit I Wrote, but we all know what song really has this one so far up on the list. I Used to Love Her would not only be the lead single off Resurrection, it would essentially be the start of Comm's long-term aspirations. Following the story of a long-lost love, Common takes us through his turbulent relationship with an unspecified woman that went all the way back to his childhood. Due to her perceived lack of interest and unpredictable decision-making, Common resolves himself to love her from a distance, just for us to find out he's been talking about his love for hip-hop all along. It was something about the 90s and plot twist endings. Whatever happened to that? In an interview with Yo MTV Raps back in '95, Common would break down the song's meaning, stating it's about hip-hop music. HER stands for hip-hop in its essence is real. This was a sentiment shared by a large cross-section of the community at the time. Hip-hop purists felt that the commercialization of gangsta rap was moving audiences away from the Enlightenment era that acts like Public Enemy, Tribe, and Ice Cube had painstakingly opened listeners' ears to. Notice we said Cube, not NWA. Resurrection would receive critical love, but lacked the market to take the message mainstream. As steeped in nostalgia as it is beat breaks, Comm's sophomore album sits at the cornerstone of alternative, jazz, and conscious, influencing everyone from Kanye and Saba to J. Cole and Joey Badass. Resurrection is one of the most impactful yet overlooked albums to drop throughout the decade. It's a couple of songs we don't come back to on here, mainly interludes, but at its core, the project is timeless, purposeful, and authentically Common from the title track to Pop's rap. Number 4, Finding Forever. If you ask us the first word that comes to mind when thinking of Comm's 7th studio album, we'd probably say energetic. Ditching the slow tempo, reflective production of B, Start the Show quickly sets the pace for heaters like Misunderstood, The People, and So Far to Go to shine as some of Comm's most cohesive and polished album cuts to date. Kanye would reprise his executive production role, with Dilla and Derek Hodges returning. will.i.am and Devo Springsteen would help to incorporate more rock and electro elements. Think Electric Circus with much less neo-soul. Belial, Dwele, and D'Angelo all helped to weave Common's lyrical tapestry together. So Far to Go would be the first collab between Common and Dilla after his passing, making a 12-year gap between Her Love and 2019. Finding Forever would move audiences to the tune of 155,000 in its first week sales, around 30K short of B's debut, but still strong enough to secure Comm's only chart topper to date. For those who are keeping track, this would be the MC's 3rd gold certification. The most difficult part about being excellent is the expectation that comes with results. The Chi-Town's most formidable rap duo would join forces with Break My Heart, You Black Maybe, and Southside, but they still couldn't quite recreate that B magic. The album is still far from your typical underachieving sequel. Finding Forever's inability to meet the hype of its predecessor has more to do with the time the albums came out, rather than the gap in quality between the two. Still, Driving Me Wild, Forever Begins, and I Want You might have done more harm than good. We know Comm had a pretty successful run with good music, but hear us out. Given the context of their previous 2 albums together, if Ye had given the Nasir beats to Common and packaged the album like a Good Music family reunion, you think they could have made a classic? I don't know, just something to think about. Before we get to the top 3 albums from Common, what do you guys think of Common as an actor? He's rarely mentioned when discussing rappers turned actors, but he's secured more than 100 roles, including John Wick Chapter 2, Just Right, and The Hate You Give. Are we sleeping on him as an actor? Let us know down in the comments what's your favorite Common role. And yes, movie lists are coming too. Number 3, Black America Again. With his strongest blend of calls to action and tenacious delivery, Lynn's 11th album brilliantly balances his most mature material with his most melodic performances. We're not just referring to production and features either. Yes, he did include R&B artists like Bilal, Marsha Ambrosius, Sid, and BJ the Chicago Kid, but we're talking about the rapping splits on the album. This is Comm's first project to not include verses from another rapper. Just Common, versatile crooners, and a microphone. His first release following the death of his father, Lonnie Lynn Jr., Common delicately recalls Pop's impact as he lets his guard down for Little Chicago Boy. He returns to his MC roots on joints like Home and Pyramid, but the album's crescendo sees Comm sharing the spotlight with living legend Stevie Wonder. Remember when we said Common had been making protest music for the last 3 decades? Well, this album will be the culmination of that effort, resulting in him performing a Tiny Desk set list in the White House library. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely give it a watch. Seeing him perform Letter to the Free in that environment, goosebumps. Black America Again would drop a little less than a month after the performance. Now that's how you roll out a project. If there was a major takeaway we had for the album, it would have to be the over-reliance on outrage as a method of sparking change. We believe this album was inspired, at least partly, by Kendrick's To Pimp a Butterfly. On that album, we don't really get much breathing room to enjoy other avenues of black life in America. So Black America Again, therefore, suffers from similar symptoms. Don't get us wrong, CT is all about exploring the fundamental issues this country is facing, the issues that led to the creation of hip-hop in the first place. But we know if you want people to really absorb a message, the first thing you need is replay value. We're not saying the two things are equally achievable, but we think a lot of listeners will view this album as a one-and-done listen rather than continually revisiting it for the artwork that it is. Number 2, Like Water for Chocolate. Certain albums are made to serve as markers in time. Imagine a capsule that you didn't need to wait 50 years to dig up. Others are meant to stand outside the flow of time, projects that were crafted without an expiration date. Common's fourth album, Like Water for Chocolate, accomplished what few have. It landed in a sweet spot between the two. Even in a group as sequestered and as isolated as the Soulquarians, Common and Dilla had stumbled upon something special. The collective had released 4 albums at this point: Things Fall Apart by The Roots, Black on Both Sides by Mos Def, Amplified by Q-Tip, and Voodoo by D'Angelo. Many collaborations would take place over the span of a year, but they had yet to fully establish an identifiable chemistry and rapport by this time. None of the previous albums had brought so many members together, with Belial, Mos Def, Jill Scott, and Roy Hargrove making appearances on the project. James Poyser and Questlove would also put in work behind the boards to shore up the album's Afrocentric subjects and sounds. But the real distinguishing factor had to be the Dilla involvement. Other than Amplified, no Soulquarian tape enjoyed this level of JD production, and not even Q-Tip's debut would utilize the sound as effectively. Payback Is a Grandmother and Knock Champa embodied what the group came together to achieve in the first place. By creating music that could speak directly to the soul, Common and friends would expose the building blocks of hip-hop's DNA before transcribing it to audiences across a plethora of genres, proving that fans were enamored with more than bass that would blow your speakers and incriminating tales of drugs and murder. Framed through an iconic photograph taken by Gordon Parks, Like Water for Chocolate is an exercise in freedom and power, essentially turning lemons into lemonade. The Soulquarian crew flipped perception on its head, taking the colored-only drinking fountain that they had been given and turning it into a watering hole for the spirit. Skip-free, thought-provoking, and sonically immersive, Lynn and the creative team he gathered would cement the legacy he had spent the previous 8 years building toward. Number 1, B. By 05, Common had enjoyed a very successful 10-year run. The Chi-Town MC had 2 classics under his belt, Resurrection and Like Water for Chocolate, along with a respectable effort in One Day It'll All Make Sense. Still, the rapper was on very shaky ground after the mixed reception of Electric Circus. With No ID out of the picture and Dilla battling health concerns, Common was looking for a new author he could entrust his story to. In comes Kanye West. A student of No ID's illustrious sampling with Dilla's ear for production, West was the perfect synthesis of the two. After 97's One Day It'll All Make Sense, Common was working with producers like Dilla, Questlove, and James Poyser. So we would hear how Detroit, Philly, and even Virginia molded his sound, but not how he would fare with a more modern Chicago soundscape. B, therefore, serves as a celebratory homecoming for one of Chi-Town's first rappers to break ground on the city's hip-hop scene. After Common joined the Good Music family in 04, him and Kanye would get to work, quickly identifying, sampling, arranging, and structuring an 11-song LP that extended far beyond what either artist had done at the time. Lynn would walk away with 4 nominations for the project, no gold though. That's starting to feel like a running gag at this point. Come to think of it, Common has only gotten 3 Grammys throughout his 3 decades in the industry, and only one of those came with his work with Yeezy. Guess the better question would be, what has the Academy gotten right? With Ye's assistance, Common effortlessly imbues his stories with vibrant ideas and hard-hitting surrealism, sewing tracks like Faithful, Testify, and The Corner across a windy city backdrop. Employing more minimalist production and features than ever before, it wouldn't be a stretch to call this the earliest markup of Kanye's rollout for the Wyoming sessions. The Wyoming sessions couldn't mimic the same quality or impact, but at least we know where the idea originated. Despite dealing with deteriorating health issues, Dilla would still contribute 2 classics to the project. Arguably the album's peak in Love Is and the outro It's Your World. It's a couple of details we gotta give some love to. The color palette on the album cover perfectly captures what the project sounds and feels like. The Taraji Raji and Wood Harris led music video for Testify, and even the Ahmad Jamal samples on They Say. All the trademarks that Kam would come to be known for. Introspection, storytelling, and lyricism would flourish throughout B's 42.5-minute runtime, so fans who want to know of Kam's artistic and musical peaks without trudging through his 12-hour discography, rest assured that B is the perfect cover page for a 30-year resume. That's another one in the books. Let us know down in the comments, 1, how many classics does Kam have under his belt, and 2, where does he belong in the discussion of all-time ears for production? Smash that like button and make sure the subscribe button is gray, and go see what's up with that super thanks. Until the next time, CJ signing off.